Winter, 1967. Deep in the backwoods of West Virginia, where the trees grow so thick that daylight barely touches the ground, 3 hunters moved through the snow with their rifles raised. They weren't tracking deer. They were tracking something that bled light. The trail was impossible to miss. Drops of luminescent red fluid, still warm, hissing slightly when they hit the frozen ground. The substance glowed like burning phosphorus, leaving scorch marks on the bark of trees where it had dripped. The lead hunter, a man named Harlan Beck, knelt down and touched the edge of one droplet with his gloved finger. It felt electric. Wrong. He stood up and signaled to the others. Keep moving. Stay quiet. Then they heard it. A high-pitched sound, almost like feedback from a radio, but organic. Breathing. Something in the sky above them was struggling to stay airborne. The hunters looked up just as their flashlights began to flicker and die, one by one. The radios on their belts erupted into static. And that's when they saw it. Behind an old collapsed barn, half buried in snow and shadow, was a creature unlike anything they'd ever seen. Massive wings, torn and leaking that same red glow. Eyes like brake lights, pulsing weakly in the dark. Its chest rose and fell with labored breaths, and every exhale sent a cloud of steam into the freezing air. Harlan raised his rifle. The other two did the same. And the moment their fingers touched the triggers, every light in the town 5 miles away went out. Total blackness. Everyone thought the Mothman was a warning of the end. But nobody imagined that even omens need to survive. To understand what happened that night, you need to know what the Mothman really was. And that means forgetting almost everything you've heard. For decades, people across Appalachia had reported sightings. Miners emerging from shifts swore they'd seen something with wings watching them from the ridge. Truckers pulling overnight hauls claimed a figure with red eyes had landed on their hoods, staring through the windshield before vanishing into the sky. Families in rural towns whispered about the thing that appeared before disasters, the shadow that meant death was coming. But here's the thing nobody talks about. The Mothman never actually hurt anyone. Not once. He just showed up. Right before something terrible happened. A bridge collapse. A mine explosion. A fire that took half a neighborhood. He was there. And then the tragedy followed. So naturally, people assumed he caused it. That's what we do, isn't it? We see the smoke and blame the alarm. But what if it wasn't like that? What if the Mothman wasn't predicting tragedies? What if he was trying to stop them? And failing. Every single time. Imagine it. A being that appears at the edge of disasters, desperate to intervene, only to be misunderstood. Chased away. Shot at. Beaten back by the very people he's trying to save. There's a story from 1952. A passenger train was barreling toward a washed-out section of track in the dead of night. The Mothman appeared on the rails ahead, wings spread wide, eyes blazing like flares. The engineer saw him, panicked, and hit the brakes too late. 16 people died. Witnesses said the creature fled into the trees, and some swear they heard it screaming. In 1961, a group of amateur spelunkers ignored every warning sign and descended into an unmapped cave system in Kentucky. The Mothman was spotted at the cave entrance hours before, pacing back and forth, beating its wings against the rock. The locals drove it off with shotguns and torches. The cave collapsed 3 hours later. All 5 spelunkers were buried alive. In 1964, a chemical plant outside Charleston had a slow gas leak that went undetected for days. The Mothman was seen circling the facility, landing on the roof, clawing at ventilation shafts. Security chased it away. 2 days later, the leak ignited. 43 workers were hospitalized. 7 died. Being an omen is hard work. Being a misunderstood omen gives you ulcers. Harlan Beck wasn't out in those woods by accident. None of them were. 2 weeks earlier, Harlan had received an unmarked envelope at his home. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a typewritten message. No signature. No return address. It read, "The creature with red eyes is responsible for the deaths in your region. It must be stopped before it kills again. The Old Pritchard Barn. December 14th. Come armed." Harlan's younger brother, Daniel, had died in a mine collapse 4 years earlier. 22 men went down that day. Only 6 came back up. And the night before it happened, 3 separate people reported seeing the Mothman perched on the entrance scaffolding, wings folded, staring down into the shaft. Harlan had spent years believing that thing had caused his brother's death. And now someone was telling him exactly where to find it. So he gathered 2 friends. Both had lost people in accidents. Both had heard the stories. And all 3 of them walked into those woods with one goal, end the creature that had been haunting their lives. When they found it, wounded and weak, Harlan felt a surge of vindication. This was it. The monster. The curse. The reason good people kept dying in this godforsaken corner of the world. But the Mothman didn't attack. It didn't snarl or lunge. It just stared at them with those glowing red eyes, breathing hard, and then turned to drag itself away. Every step it took produced a sound like metal scraping metal. Like its bones were antennas picking up radio static. The air around it vibrated. And Harlan realized, for the first time, that the creature was terrified. It was running for its life. The Mothman led them deeper into the woods, moving slower now, its wings trailing through the snow. The hunters followed at a distance, rifles ready, until the creature disappeared into the skeletal remains of an old textile factory that had been abandoned since the 30s. Harlan signaled for the others to spread out. They entered through different doors, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, the factory was a maze of rusted machinery, collapsed catwalks, and shattered windows. The air smelled like oil and decay. And then Harlan saw the walls. They were covered in symbols. Not graffiti. Not anything human. These were precise, deliberate markings, etched deep into the concrete. Spirals. Eyes. Wings. Patterns that seemed to shift when you looked at them too long. In the center of the largest wall was something that looked like a mural. Faded, but still visible. It showed figures. Humanoid, but wrong. Too tall. Too thin. Wings where there shouldn't be wings. And beneath each figure was a symbol. Harlan moved closer, his breath fogging in the cold. He recognized one of the symbols. It matched reports he'd read about the Mothman. But there were others. Dozens of them. This wasn't just about one creature. This was something bigger. He pulled out a notebook and started sketching. A figure wreathed in light, standing in snow. Another submerged in water, barely visible beneath the surface. A third that seemed to be made of smoke and ash, hovering above a city skyline. These weren't monsters. They were omens. And there were more of them. All over the world. The Lantern Man, seen in Alaska before earthquakes. A glowing figure that appeared on frozen tundra, holding what looked like a flame in its hands. Witnesses said it would walk toward settlements, trying to lead people away, only to be driven back by fear. The Pale Diver, spotted off the coast of Japan before tsunamis. A woman with white skin and no eyes, rising from the water, reaching toward ships. Sailors would fire flares and guns, and she would sink back down. Hours later, the waves would come. The Red Wisp, reported in Europe before plagues and epidemics. A humanoid figure made of crimson mist, drifting through villages, touching doors. Those who saw it would lock themselves inside. The sickness always followed. You never want to see your local omen. It means something has gone very, very wrong. Harlan stared at the mural, a cold realization settling over him. The Mothman wasn't a monster. He was a worker. A guardian. Something ancient and exhausted, trying to hold back disasters that humans kept creating. And for centuries, people had been stopping him. The hunters surrounded the factory. Harlan stood at the center of the main floor, his rifle aimed into the shadows where he knew the Mothman was hiding. He could hear it breathing. Ragged. Weak. "Come out," Harlan said. His voice echoed off the walls. No more running. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the Mothman emerged from behind a stack of collapsed machinery. Its wings dragged on the ground, torn and useless. One of its eyes had dimmed. It looked at Harlan with something that might have been resignation. Harlan's finger tightened on the trigger. "You took my brother," he said. "You took a lot of people. I'm ending this." And that's when the Mothman did something no one expected. It spoke. Not with words. Not with sound. But with something that bypassed ears entirely and went straight into the mind. A flood of images. Sensations. Memories that weren't Harlan's own. He saw the Silver Bridge. The massive suspension bridge that connected Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Ohio. He saw it from above, at night, packed with Christmas traffic. Headlights stretching in both directions. Families. Workers. People going home. And he saw the bridge beginning to fail. A single eye-bar in the suspension chain, corroded and weak, starting to crack. Metal groaning under stress. The structure swaying. Then he saw the Mothman. Weeks earlier. Landing on the bridge supports, clawing at the failing eye-bar, trying to draw attention to it. Drivers slamming on their brakes in terror. Police arriving with guns drawn. The creature fleeing into the night. He saw it return, again and again, trying to warn people. Trying to show them the danger. And every time, it was chased away. Shot at. Beaten back with crowbars and tire irons. And then, 3 days before the collapse, he saw the Mothman ambushed by a group of men. Cornered. Beaten. Shot multiple times in the chest and wings. Left for dead in a ditch. It had survived. Barely. But it was too weak to return to the bridge. Too injured to try again. And on December 15, 1967, at 5:04 p.m., the Silver Bridge collapsed into the Ohio River. 46 people died. The Mothman hadn't caused the tragedy. It had tried to prevent it. And humanity had stopped it from succeeding. Harlan staggered backward, the rifle slipping from his hands. His mind was reeling. He looked at the creature, this broken, desperate thing, and for the first time, he understood. Omens don't cause disasters. They warn us. They try to save us. And we destroy them for it. But the vision wasn't over. The Mothman showed him one more thing. The bridge. Tonight. In just a few hours, the final failure would occur. The collapse was imminent. And without the Mothman, there would be no warning. Hundreds of people would die. Harlan's eyes widened. "No," he whispered. "Not again." Harlan ran. He left the factory, left his friends, and drove straight to the police station in Point Pleasant. He burst through the doors, wild-eyed and frantic, shouting about the bridge. About the collapse. About the danger. The officers looked at him like he'd lost his mind. "Harlan, what the hell are you talking about? The Silver Bridge is going to collapse. Tonight. You have to close it down, evacuate everyone, get people off the roads." They tried to calm him. Asked if he'd been drinking. Told him the bridge had been inspected recently and was fine. Harlan grabbed the nearest officer by the shirt and screamed, "46 people are going to die if you don't listen to me." They escorted him out. Told him to go home and sleep it off. He tried calling the state police. The highway department. Anyone who would listen. No one believed him. Why would they? He was just some hunter from the backwoods rambling about monsters and visions. At 5:04 p.m., the Silver Bridge collapsed. The I-bar snapped. The suspension chain failed. The entire structure folded into the Ohio River in less than a minute. Cars, trucks, buses, all plunging into the icy water. The sound could be heard for miles. 46 people died. Just like the Mothman had shown him. Harlan survived because he'd been at the police station, desperately trying to warn them. But the guilt crushed him. He'd seen it coming. He'd known. And he couldn't save anyone. He went back to the factory the next day. The Mothman was gone. The only trace left behind was a smear of that luminescent red blood on the concrete floor, still faintly glowing. Harlan knelt beside it and wept. Decades later, researchers combing through Mothman sightings began to notice a pattern. Every appearance coincided with a human decision. A choice to ignore safety warnings. A refusal to inspect critical infrastructure. A shortcut that saved money but cost lives. The tragedies weren't inevitable. They were preventable. And the Mothman had been trying to prevent them. In 2019, a security camera outside a shopping center in California captured something strange. It was late at night, and the parking lot was empty except for one car. A shadow passed over the camera lens. Something large. Winged. And then, seconds later, a massive section of the hillside above the shopping center gave way. A landslide that would have buried the building and everyone inside. But the building was empty. Because the security guard on duty that night had seen something that terrified him. A figure with glowing red eyes standing in the parking lot, staring up at the hill. He'd called the police, evacuated the area, and saved dozens of lives. The footage was never officially explained. But people who knew the stories recognized what they were looking at. Omens don't choose the disaster. We do. They just try to hold the pieces together while there's still time. And if you ever see one, don't run. Don't shoot. Don't chase it away. Listen. Because it's not there to hurt you. It's there to save you. From yourself. Fade out.